see the outside, but white lies turn to purple elephants. How many times will I have to tell you it? I hope you know how to live with it, cause it's not going away. Don't try, don't try, don't. White lies turn to purple elephants. Don't try, you'll become irrelevant. You can't train a purple elephant. Give it a name, try to lock it away. But how can I take you seriously? You live with purple elephants. You think I'm being dramatic? It's the habit that'll drive you away. Yeah. It's time to purple elephants. In your room. It's time to purple elephants. In your
Hello there, and you are there, and I, again, I'm here, back again. Wee bit of a time off, sorry, life seems to get in the way, but thank you for coming back and listening to the latest little update. There's a couple of things I want to cover in this one today. I'm sure you can see one of them by the thumbnail. This is obviously Killin Time episode 23. Don't have a name for this one. I'm sure I'll come up with something witty with the absolute top banter that I have, top ants that I have through the video, and I'll probably come up with a name. So right now it's unnamed. I'll surprise myself by the time this goes up. So there's a couple of things, as I say, I want to cover in this one, to kind of make it sound a bit what's the word, professional, I suppose, and news-like. The main topics tonight are Luke Mitchell's parole is denied, and civil war between the factions. So a little while ago, I did kind of speak about the split after it came out that Sandra Lean had been telling some little porkies about the availability of transcripts. Can we hear about that little porky actually? Let's just, again, Bob Ruff podcast. That guy is an absolute idiot, but let's listen to this.
Okay, the first question is not actually on the list because it only just came up in the last couple of days. And that was, you remember at the very beginning, you asked about the availability of transcripts in Scotland and the cost.
Yes.
And I found just the other day the transcripts of criminal proceedings in Scotland order, which specifies that the court will only allow release of transcripts if satisfied that the person requesting the transcript is a person who falls within a specified class of person and intends to use it for a specified purpose only.
So in the clip there, obviously, Sandra goes through the fact that they're not available, why they're not available, blah-de-blah-de-blue. And, yeah, so that's kind of that, to be honest. She's claiming that it's not possible to get access to them, needs to be special cause, special reason, the expense went into, and she was telling lies. She was telling lies to her own supporters, and what they were looking for was a little bit clarification on what happened in court. And just probably, I think a lot of them thought maybe they could look into it and see a wee bit more that probably showed innocence on Luke's part. So they'll probably want to look at it to see the real deep, seedy conspiracy that Sandra Lean and Scott Forbes claim. So obviously that didn't happen in court. There was no "I just did" from Alice Walker that Scott Forbes claims and keeps claiming to this day, even though everyone can read the damn thing and see that it's not there. But there's no explanation to that. So as I say, it differs so much from the story that's being told that they couldn't really have that come out. So I think Sandra Lean tried to bury that by saying there was problems doing it, and I think she hid it for long enough, and then when they found out she was lying, there was, as I say, a split in the Luke's army. Some generals, I'm not too like up on my military vernacular. Is it generals, lieutenants, commanders? Either way, yeah, they, as I say, split, and we done an episode, Lord of the Lies, where we spoke a little bit about what will happen going forward, in my opinion. Mr. Ledger, if you could, another callback, please.
I'll show you. When the chips are down, these civilized people, they'll eat each other.
So, seeing as we're on the callbacks, I feel this little nugget that I'm going to share with you today is that age-old classic.
Vindication!
Because it turns out one was totally correct. So, on Twitter or X or whatever we're calling it nowadays, actually, I suppose the better way to lead into this, that's quite a bad lead in. The better way to lead into this would be to explain kind of where we're coming from. So, for me, more recently, it's become a succession of Sandra and Scott taking turns to throw each other under the bus. Now, I think there's a certain element of last gasp where they need to wildly swing to keep whatever grift they've got going. I've made no bones about it. I'll keep on saying it. They're both cornies. They're only here for money. If anybody believes they're here for justice, then they don't actually watch the way that they behave. And I will go into a little bit of that at the end, because I've got something that I want to get off my chest about this. In terms of Scott Forbes and Sandra Lean. So, yeah, as I say, they've been taking turns chucking each other under the bus. If we remember back to the video we done on the social sessions, where we looked at some claims made by Scott Forbes, where it was quite evident that he was talking about Sandra Lean not stepping in to do anything about the samples being destroyed. Now, in that video, I did accuse Sandra Lean of a number of things, namely doing fuck all. That's an exact quote. And she replied to that in one of our latest updates, where she said that she couldn't do anything. Oh, well, actually, Sandra, what did you say?
Claims have been made that I did or didn't do certain things surrounding that person and the information that was coming my way. Now, what I'm going to tell you is nobody else was there at the time. Nobody else knew the circumstances, what the options were, what the different choices were at the time. There was one professional that I approached on a couple of occasions as things developed. But what I'm going to tell you is the idea that I did nothing or that I could have stopped the destruction of those transcripts is not true. It's not true.
Thank you for actually answering the question for once, though. Ms. Lean? Refuse to say doctor. She's not a doctor. I'll go into that. So as I say, she claims that there was nothing she could really do. She kind of makes it out like the world was against her, and she's just the poor little criminologist that can't change the system because the system is so corrupt. But with that in mind, that obviously was a big eye-opener. Sandra Lean was, at the time, handing in a petition with so many thousand names and promoting the idea that they were fighting a winning battle, when in reality she knew those samples were being destroyed. But again, I think she wanted to use that to her advantage, to then the shock value of, look at this timing. And I think to a certain extent they did. So, Murder in a Small Town, the documentary, came out roughly about the same time. And what they're looking at is the idea that because those things existed, the petition and the documentary, that's why samples were being destroyed. The timeline, though, shows us that Sandra Lean knew about it, done nothing about it, and then used it as a ploy to get more support and make the people in charge of the case or the investigation or the samples look a little more guilty. Again, if you guys didn't figure that out up to this point, and this is all brand new to you, you need to look at Sandra Lean and Scott Forbes' behaviour and what they gained from it, which is always money, let's be honest. So, that notoriety, sorry, there's two things.
Our chief weapon is surprise. Surprise and fear. Fear and fun are two weapons. Our fear.
So, as I said, that was Sandra Lean getting chucked under the bus by Scott. Scott came back... the other way around. Scott chucked Sandra Lean under the bus on that one. Whoop. So, Sandra Lean didn't really come out as such and chuck Scott under the bus. But what Sandra does have is... a right hand of justice, could we call it that? Someone who was close to Luke, who had a relationship with Luke, who goes under a pseudonym, but is one of the main campaigners for Luke's innocence. Now, on Twitter, this is where we're all leading for this one, there was a comment from a Dax 1991 BA. Now, I don't know Dax. I hope 1991 isn't when he was born, or she was born though, because that, my god, I'm old. Said, now they were talking to the person in question, and they brought up the subject of the destroyed samples, and I don't know if they maybe watch these videos, or they just pay attention. They had asked, talking about Sandra Lean, did she want the evidence destroyed, or did she just not give a, and obviously we put in the fuck there. So did she want the evidence destroyed, or did she not just give a fuck? Now, the campaigner replies in a very interesting way, and this is what I want to delve into a little bit here. Again, it's that
vindication.
Thank you, Captain Holt. The campaigner replied, "Well, that's nonsense. It's clear you've sadly been listening to useless..." So, you said you forgot the "ah" there. I'm going to read that again because you forgot "ah" and it totally threw me out. So, well, that's nonsense. It's clear you've sadly been listening to a useless and bitter man with no credentials who has spat out the dummy as he isn't trusted with case updates. Scott, how'd those bus wheels feel? So let's break that down, shall we? Because this is a fun one. So it's nonsense that Sandra Lean didn't give a fuck. Or did she want the evidence destroyed? Now, it's not nonsense. We've shown the timeline. It's not nonsense. She didn't do anything. So, but that's just absolute bullshit. It's not nonsense. Sandra Lean knew about it. She done fucking nothing to stop it. So, well, that's nonsense is the most ironic and hypocritical line in there, because this whole thing is nonsense. Your whole movement is. I don't mean what you wrote here, because I agree with some of the stuff you wrote here. Let's have a look at it. So see, it's clear you've sadly been listening to a useless, bitter man. So Scott Forbes is not only bitter, but he's useless. Oh, that must cut deep, Scott. Cut deep. You're useless. I thought you'd been doing so much good work for Luke, but it turns out you're useless. And he's bitter. Why is he bitter? Well, that's because he isn't trusted with case updates. So everything that was happening, maybe even including the samples getting destroyed, can we decipher that? He wasn't trusted with that. And he was supposed to be Luke's legal representative, remember, guys? But he wasn't trusted with case updates. That's odd. Now, the other thing I would say here is he spat out the dummy, of course. But before that, there was two interesting words, which I will be using quite a lot over the next couple of months, and probably over the rest of this video. And that is that he was a useless and bitter man with no credentials. That is a powerful statement. Now, for a man who professes to be a legal professional to have no credentials, that's a bit odd. Now, what else is odd about it? The fact that the movement themselves asked this supposed legal professional with no credentials to write a book to back innocence. How can it be that you can back a man, have bought his book, have touted his work, watched all the podcasts, shared all the podcasts,
write the theme tune and sing the theme tune,
backed your leader, shall we say, in terms of Sandra, for having him on side, and he had no credentials? When did you find that out? Did you know all along that the man had no credentials? But you still let him be a figurehead for your group. You still let him back up your friend Luke. Even though he had no credentials. Now, when you say no credentials, what does that mean? It's basic, and it's something that I've said from the start of these videos, and that people have said online many times, and is yet to be disproven. Scott Forbes isn't, never has been, and never will be a legal professional. Scott Forbes was not signed off for his training from the solicitors that he worked in, and then was taken to court for making threats to the person who wouldn't sign him off. Scott Forbes is a crook, a criminal, a carny, a fraudster, a charlatan, a liar, an idiot, a moron, and just full of hot air. And I'm happy that finally someone is saying it out loud, but it happens to be Sandra's right hand. What? The gnasher to her dick dastardly is the person that's telling you that the person you've been backing or you've been listening to and read and bought their book has no credentials. Now, what else has been said about this? Really, quite a lot. Scott Forbes has taken it personally. So I want to look at one more post before I move on. And that's kind of covering it all as well. Let's have a wee quick look at this one. So here's a little real-time argument. On X, there was a company, a post from Lewis Legal Limited Criminal Defence. Now, I don't know who these guys are. They could be major big players, they could be small town bird lawyers. I have no idea. I'll probably will look into it a wee bit. But they had said that, talking about the Luke Mitchell case, and they asked, would it have been the same star? Is it the same person who is controlling the case? I've offered pro bono assistance in this case, spoken to his mother, and it all comes down to the gatekeeper of Luke's case. It may be wrong, but his case appears to have stalled somewhat. Now, spoilers, the gatekeeper is Sandra Lean. I don't know why people can't say the name. Is she fucking Beetlejuice? Sandra Lean. Why is it all these people who, when they find out Sandra Lean has told a mistruth, just use his fucking vicarious monikers? Why can't you say her name? I've granted, actually, there was the ex-admins who had left Sandra did take on board what I'd said when I brought up with themselves, and they did retrospectively go back and change a lot of things. So Sandra was named. So there are people that are willing to do it, but I don't know why in this case they don't. So Danielle Barclay, who has had her own appearance on a podcast, Wee Danny, they call her, because she's wee. No, because she's young. She's not young. Acts like it, but she's not young. It doesn't matter. It's neither a negative nor a positive. However, she said, the case hasn't stalled. Some people don't have the right to case information, and Luke reserves the right to instruct his legal team without question, particularly from those who are of no use to him. Just because you offered to help doesn't mean you have the ability to do so. Then Scott C. Forbes, because the middle ones, it makes him sound intelligent, you see. Scott C. Forbes. Makes him sound intelligent. Like a minor bird. So he had said, no use to him, doing a wee quote there. That's not how that works, Scott. But anyway, no use to him. Scott took great offence for that. And the follow-on from it itself, if I can find it, here we go. I believe it was it Peter? I think this is Peter. It looks like Peter. It says, don't take it personally when your work isn't wanted. The gatekeeper has put the case in reverse. It is Luke Mitchell's case, not Danny B, not SL, and not SF. So that's Scott Forbes Sandra Lean. Therefore, why has the claimed 4-time top QCs not be able to do anything in this case? Nothing to be done. The Scott had went on then to say, no use to him. Received instructions from an anonymous hairdresser some weeks ago telling me who to talk to and who not to. How they were the professionals and were doing a great job as they visited him and looked after his mum and had a great TikTok page. Spelled TikTok wrong there, Scott. You're maybe a wee bit older like me. The TikTok you're thinking of is...
Excellent. Now we must dump the head in the front and tie Jack's feet together.
Which isn't TikTok. It's a new app, mate. All the kids are using it. Would be down with the kids. Use the apps, mate. So, Scott went on to say, hairdresser and others with no jail or parole experience, in my opinion, have set Luke Mitchell back years. He was on day releases breaking down all the fears, concerns, etc., and would be getting parole soon. Instead, he's in shots with no parole as a result. It wasn't that. That's not why he got sent back to shots, Scott. It was because he recorded himself saying a lot of things over several phone calls, which is against the law. I don't want to have to do another video on that. Look up the law. Against the law. Communications. Illegal. Then Scott went on to say, the gatekeeper, because he also can't say Sandra's name for some reason. Sandra Lean. And she's not standing right beside me, so she's not actually Beetlejuice. The gatekeeper has put the case in reverse. Don't take it personally when your work isn't wanted. You join a long list including top QCs, times 4, several lawyers, journalists, etc. It's the worst miscarriage in Scottish legal system. Hyperbole there. The Peter Parkinson's replied after that. Sorry, reading that wrong. And just carrying on, just the last wee bit here. It does make you wonder if Scott had said the gatekeeper has put the case in reverse, obviously, and I'll talk about the QCs. And then it says it does make you wonder, Scott, if dirty play runs deeper than you and I can see. And Scott says, I see it, sadly. So fucking intelligent. And then Jackie Johnson, another one of Luke's army, says lots of others are seeing things too. It's sad for the person still paying the price for a crime he didn't commit. His name's fucking Luke. Can nobody say anybody's names? Too many pronouns, pal. Lost all respect in the gatekeeper. Ugh. Anybody else just thinking Ghostbusters? It's just Ghostbusters, isn't it? The first one though. A young man being very badly advised. Now there's only one person they're talking about, and it doesn't take any kind of real intelligent person to figure out who. I'm sure Scott could figure it out. So they're all now chucking Sandra Lean under the bus. At the same time she's chucking them under the bus. So, it's like I said, really, they will eat each other, all these civilised people. But very quickly, let's just go through a couple of things that might go away to prove what was actually posted about Scott Forbes. What makes people think Scott has no credentials? Let's have a little look at some.
But can I go back to the area where Jodie was found? Now, this is a notorious area in the local area for people, you know, drinking, doing drugs, and God knows what else. There's even a gang up there, is there not?
There's half a dozen gang huts. See, I think it's 900 metres, if I remember correctly. 900 metres be 25 metres of woodland strip. Inside that woodland strip, there's campfires by the dozen. There's mere people have carved out wee gang huts to sit and drink and smoke. People are hanging pit bull terriers through trees with a spring pole to make their dogs fit. There's men go burying greyhounds here. It's a local place where everything bad can happen.
Yeah, and it's also it's an area where there's an awful lot of poachers and hunters and whatnot.
Yes,
am I right?
Yes.
So this is a quick one, but in terms of no credentials, I'm going to put up some footage here of Scott walking around with premeditated patter during the chat that they had, one of the interviews and kind of, as I say, a walkabout. As you'll see by this footage here, the image of this being some bustling crime alley type thing with, you know, all the gang huts. If you look around all the footage that I'll put up, any videos that I'll put up, this is poachers, dogs tied to trees, campfires, 10 to a dozen, gang huts, anywhere. Can anybody see any signs of anything that Scott said here? But there is one part of the walk around with 5-0 that I want to focus in on, because it goes to something that Scott says. So play one bit here, then play the full part that I think is a no credentials contradiction, and come back and explain why.
Coming from that direction. Me personally, I think Jodie Jones would not have taken the London path. I believe Jodie Jones would have come in here. She would have walked in here. Yes, now, if you look down here, you can walk directly to where Jodie was found. However, I believe this is the path that Jodie took. I believe that Jodie did not go down London's path and climb over any V in the wall. Yeah. I'll tell you why. Anybody from East Houses coming and going towards Luke Mitchell's, they come in this direction and go across this open field. You can see where the man and the dog is, right? That's where, just behind that man and the dog, there's a tool hire place that takes you on the New Battle Road and takes you into Luke. You can also follow this path here and it takes you down into the edge of the back end of the New Battle Abbey College and a golf course, and you can walk along that field. Why would anybody with local knowledge walk away down the London path to climb over a V to go to Luke Mitchell? You don't have to use that path. Some others might. Listen, every time I've been here, this open field has always got people from East Houses in it walking their dogs. But I believe Jodie would have walked it if she was going towards Luke Mitchell. I believe Jodie Jones was killed somewhere in this field. The only blood here, and the only reason I know this, is for crime scene photographs. The crime scene photographs were taken before they destroyed this crime scene, and I'll explain why. The only blood I've seen here, 500 millimetres from the ground, about this height, there's a line, a trickle of blood, and I mean a trickle, a line, and they tell you it's not arterial spray, in other words, it's no gush. Right. So how did blood get on the wall? Jodie's lying over there, but how did blood get here? It's impossible. Me personally, I think Jodie's been carried down here, and as the person's come round there, the head, her head's been a height. That's the only explanation I can come up.
The contradiction for this one lies in the no credentials lies in where, what, and how. Scott Forbes in the first video that we saw, first part of the video there, says that he believes that the murder happened in the field. But in the second video, we go into the fact that there was blood found on the wall. Now, the explanation for that is that someone carried Jodie's body down along the wall, turned round, and somehow got blood on the wall. Now, I will put some other footage back up here, because the video goes on to kind of poke holes in it itself by just existing, because as you'll see, behind Scott and 5-0 is the field. Now, Scott did say that he didn't think that Jodie Jones had went over the V. So in his mind, the perpetrator, the killer, killed Jodie in the field, then didn't go through the V, so they must have came through that gap there where the fence, you can see it at the background there, where the field is. So they've came through there, then they've proceeded to walk through the woodland, right up to the wall, and then along the wall, to then turn round again and dispose of Jodie's body.
It doesn't make any sense. I wish there was sense. Where did all this sense go?
No credentials.
There was a point I read in your book as well, so you talk about, obviously there was text messages, Luke's phone, it was seized immediately, then they go, like every other person for the search part of their phone, it was a few days later and they couldn't put a name to whose phone, so people sharing phones, but you said in your book that there was text messages deleted Felix's phone by the police that could have led to...
Yes.
Obviously been exonerated.
Listen, there's one text message, I think it's, the times are wrong here and my trolls pick you up because you study, so we'll say approximately 4:46 or 5:30. Well, Luke Mitchell texts his mum, right, and says, if Jodie turns up, tell her I'm in Newbattle. Newbattle Abbey is a college where Mark Kane is, a couple of 100 yards away from Luke's home, but it's a beautiful place. It's got big plain fields and forests and all. It's beautiful. He's over there with his two pals smoking ash, and he texts his mum, tell Jodie, if Jodie turns up, tell her I'm over in Newbattle. Now that could have proven, but the police then start playing with Luke Mitchell's phone. They take his phone off him, so the old Nokias, do you remember it?
Aye.
Now that should have been sealed,
Frick.
They should have sealed that very quick. That could have been filled with blood, and you know, he's allegedly committed a heinous crime. So they take his mobile phone, and the man then, the police officer then takes it back out the bag, no gloves, no protection, opens it back up to get Luke's mother's phone number, and then whatever they do with the text messages, they delete all the text messages apart from the ones that they were convenient to their narrative.
Right, so they've almost fucking fitted them up really, in such a way. How do you know this? But
mobile records.
Mobile records, so you can tell they have been deleted.
Mobile records.
And obviously the phone could have only been in the custody of the police. Nobody else could have done that.
Yes, nobody else.
Had to have been the police.
My understanding is he opened up in a unsafe environment. No, so many coming at one time, it blew the memory.
During the testimony of Alan Towers, a police officer, they looked at the transcript from one of Luke's interviews, and in it they spoke in another about it on the stand, that Luke had admitted deleting his own phone records, his own text messages and the previous calls he had made. His reason given was that he was afraid he would make an outgoing call, which makes zero sense. However, Luke Mitchell admitted to deleting those call logs and those text messages before the phone was in the police's custody. Also, he was using it in the back of the car that he was sitting in after they had found Jodie's body. The phone was taken away from him and given back. He was asked to contact his mum. There was no man, as Scott likes to put it, who took the phone out to get the number for Luke Mitchell's mum. This is all in court transcripts and it is laid out in police interviews. Scott is lying. He is absolutely lying here, and he's actually been put in the shit, not by Sandra this time, by Luke's own police interviews, where he admitted that he had deleted his own records like I stated, like Ms. Lean argued against on keeping the record straight, Scott, that's a lie. No credentials. Next.
Then, right, we a stripe or that would stab you. Or that would be a sore, wouldn't it? And it could kill you if you hit the right place. But under no circumstances could that have anything to do with the murder of Jodie Jones. But for 20 years I've been telling you, the missing knife, to imply, oh, he got rid of the knife. Fuck it. They had one in the house, the police took, right? And then they found a pouch, same as this. And on the pouch it had 666, Jodie Jones' initial and her date of birth, and Nirvana. I get confused with music, Nirvana. Right, a verse for Nirvana. So they found the pouch and they used this against him. It was a devil worshipper and all that, for into Nirvana and all that, and they couldn't find the knife. His mother gave it to the police. Now I got this wrong in the past or whatever. Allegedly, his mother gave that knife to so he's got two, right? They've got one, and they find the pouch for the second one, but they can't find the knife, so they call it the missing knife. The mother hands it to his lawyer. I've just learned recently, seen the night before the trial. So there's no missing knife, right? I've got two of them. But implying the paper that somehow this missing knife could be the murder weapon. Listen, I'll just tell you, before Jodie's killed, she was trying.
This one keeps coming back up, and there's a couple of quick ones. If you notice at the end there, I kept in where he closed the knife, because that was a what? That was a lockback. Something that in a previous video Scott Forbes had denied the knife actually did have a lockback, because that affects the legality of it as well. Shouldn't be carrying knives like that. However, before I go any further, one cracking bit of insight, from Scott Forbes that I wanted to point out here. Cracking bit of insight.
Right, well, that would stab you.
That will indeed stab you. Whew, cracking. So, really with this, it's confusing the whole point again. The knife that was handed in on the eve of the trial, let's go slow with this, was a black-handled scunting blade, which the police had been looking for on one of their searches, and Corrine had stated that she found it in a bag by a dog's feeding bowl, gave it to the solicitor, Nigel, who himself allegedly handed it in the eve before the trial. Now, in the previous video with 5-0, Scott Forbes had talked about how the knife was in the possession of the police all along. Here, he admits that it wasn't, because it was handed in, but then confuses it by talking about the second knife. And I'll say it again, and I'll say it once more. The wooden-handled Jack Pike knife was never found. So, this idea that there's two knives, both in the police possession, is not true. Scott is trying to rewrite a lie here, after the transcript showed that what he had said before was utter nonsense. Again, let's just say it. No credentials. Next.
That they found a DNA profile on Jodie's bra. That's just lies, Rod. They found a mixed profile. Now, the mixed DNA that was found on Jodie's bra, if I remember correctly, I think it was 6 human beings could have been part of it. But they couldn't rule out Luke. They couldn't rule out her brother. They couldn't rule out the two guys on the moped. They couldn't rule out the DC Adobe. They couldn't rule out anyone.
This is not based in reality. The chance of you having the same or similar DNA as someone else, or the same DNA strand, is 1 in 200 billion. The idea that they couldn't rule out Joseph Jones is especially strange, considering that the DNA of Jodie Jones would resemble Joseph Jones in quite a high amount due to the centimorgans that they would share from their mother and father. So this is not based in reality, not based in science. 6 human beings. It could have been 6 human beings. That's not even possible to calculate. The fact of the matter is, the genetic markers that were in the DNA profile that was found on Jodie's bra was closely resembled looks, but was mixed with someone they don't know, but it closely resembled looks. Not 6 human beings. What else was it going to be? A fucking dog? Where did they get the damn things to back up their science? Mansers.
How fat would a dude have to be to stop a bullet? How can a guy make a radioactive fallout suit for under $5? Can you fart so hard your balls explode?
No credentials. Next.
They also never found a murder weapon, did they? After all this, 300 wounds and they couldn't find a murder weapon.
No.
Well, Roddy, that's maybe... I think they did find the murder weapon. They found a large bowie knife and a skip, maybe 500 metres away from where Jodie was found. And it was in a garage skip used for scrap metal. And the police found a large bowie knife covered in blood with the tip broken off. And they sent a forensic team into the garage and emptied the skip. Now, we only found this out last year, a year ago. And it was hidden for the defence. And subsequently it's been destroyed. But the police had a large bowie knife covered in blood as a production, and the defence team never ever aware of it, ever.
Another knife story that Scott Forbes seems to struggle to get his head round. Well, I say struggle to get his head round. I think he's consciously doing it because he's a liar. But the knife that he's talking about that was found at Home Farm was not a Bowie knife. There's plenty of evidence. There's Freedom of Information Acts that have came out in terms of knives that were found in the area. He has in another chat, which I was going to go into and show you some other examples, but I'll be honest, I've got so many here, I could be here all day, and I'm conscious of the length of this video already. I do want to get on to another subject before I wrap it up, so I'll kind of cut this short with the amount. Honestly, guys, I've got another 8 examples right now, but I'm going to leave this maybe for another video. But with this one, it talks about a yellow-handled knife that the police had told a young teen in the area just to ignore. It comes out subsequently that yellow-handled knife did exist. There was a Freedom of Information Act that came out with that in mind. That did exist. Scott was lying about that. I'll show that in another video maybe, because as I say, that's another lie. But in here, he talks about the Bowie knife. It wasn't a Bowie knife, but it was a Simi knife, which is a kind of longer blade itself. Speculation here on my part. If it's at a garage, might be used to try and open a car window. That would break a tip. But the Freedom of Information Act showed that whole chatter that he was talking about, blood on Bowie knives found in skips, no truth to it whatsoever. Absolutely zero truth to what Scott Forbes is saying there, and he said it on several podcasts. The lie has evolved. I'm sure we'll get into it, but I'm sick of talking about Scott's lies about knives. He just changes the story. He can't stick to it. We'll say it one more time. No credentials. But before I get on to the next subject, I do want to put in one just at the end here, because, well, more for enjoyment really than anything else, but just to show that nothing is sacred when it comes to Scott Forbes evolving lies, talking nonsense, and just loving the sound of, I don't know, his origin story, for want of a better word. Here's a couple of clips, see if you spot it.
I remember going to my dad's the other night. My dad's a coal miner, Fred O'Keefe. I knew he was going to get, what's he, because everybody was Mitchell's a beast. I went to my dad one time in the pub, and he was quite a funny wee man. He was a wee brusher in a pit, a miner. He was.
Oh, is he?
Aye. Stubborn man. He's I grew up in a mining village down the hall. 3 miles, 4 miles from where Jodie Jones was murdered. Aye. My dad was a construction worker. They blacklisted. My dad was blacklisted, couldn't work in the UK. Aye. A communist. Aye. Card carrying communist, right? So my father worked abroad, Holland and Germany, Alvidersen pay. Do you remember that? Aye. My father was the first Alvidersen pay. Aye. And
of course this makes him sound like a serious person, not a man starved of attention. two different origin stories for his own dad. Can't even keep to the same story when it comes to his upbringing, let alone the story that he's trying to tell is a factual innocence movement for Luke Mitchell. Absolute joke. No credentials is the best way to put it. It really, really is. Absolutely fantastic. Or maybe just to put it up a wee bit of a simpler way.
I think I can smell shite.
But on to something else, and something that unfortunately I'm not able to spend as much time on as I'd want, not just because of the length of what we spoke about, but because of the amount of information that is available at the moment. Now, Luke's Army, had a protest on the 20th anniversary of the day he was convicted. It fell on a Sunday, so the courts were shut. Protest must have really went down well, but smattering people, I wouldn't say it's really a good turned up to watch Sandra Lean do her usual TED talk, this time clutching a sunflower, which I find in very poor taste. I find the use of sunflowers by Luke's Army in incredibly poor taste, given that was, I believe, Jodie Jones' favourite flower. So they kind of use that symbolism to promote innocence for Luke, which is an evil, twisted thing to do, and Sandra knows what she's doing when she does it as well. That's conscious. Standing up there with a sunflower in her hand. She's been told enough times that it's probably not in good taste to know not to do it, but she thinks it's a good look for her. Even her book had a sunflower on the front of it. So, as I say, they had their protest, and I believe 2 days after it was announced that Luke Mitchell's parole had been denied. However, on the update, which we showed a little bit of before, Sandra Lean had spoke of the fact that there was a new charge being levied which could affect the parole. So the idea that it's a surprise, again, Sandra Lean is pulling the wool over people's eyes here. She knew fine well what was happening, and she's hiding a lot of it from her followers. Now I'm going to look into finding out what it is that's being hid. That's why we can't spend too much time or really get into the weeds with it, because there's not enough information. The pieces that were in the newspapers, a lot of it, the sources were Sandra Lean, so the opinion is tainted in that respect. And she comes across by saying something about being a sexual danger, but I can't see anything in the documentation that explains it the way Sandra Lean explains it. Personally, I think that's because she's using hyperbole, that's the word. And I think she's trying to, again, play the victim. Because, like we said before, she's the little criminologist that couldn't. Oh, there we go, I found the name for the video. There you go, there it is. A criminologist in air quotes though, big bunny ears. The little criminologist that couldn't. She's this is again where I'd say earlier on about the no credentials when it comes to Scott Forbes. Let's not forget that Sandra Lean's qualifications aren't in criminology. To be a professional criminologist, you would think that you would work on cases, but Sandra Lean doesn't. She works part-time, I believe, as a driver. She's not a criminologist. She doesn't have any criminology qualifications. The qualifications that she has serve no purpose in terms of making a profession out of it. And again, if she did have the chance of being a professional in the field, then why the fuck isn't she doing it? Surely there's a lot more money to be made in that than part-time driving. I think it's a van or a bus, whatever. Probably, well, she should. No, I'll leave it at that. I was going to make a comment, but I won't. So, as I say, the lack of credentials on all of it is a joke. But that's kind of where I think the parole was affected as well. We did say earlier on in the video, when Luke had made the calls out of the jail to tell his truth, that was against the law. And actually, wait a minute, Sandra Lean said something in James English. Let me play this.
Because if he was to get a retrial, you're talking maybe another 3-4 years. And has he got a release date yet? Has he got...
No, he got a minimum
20 years?
20, but he won't be eligible for parole because he won't address offending behaviour. He won't participate in any of the training courses or anything because he didn't do it. And from my experience of other cases, that being the case, he won't progress. So the 20-year date will come and go, and
he'll still be in.
However many years after that will come and go
because
as well.
You go and get like, anger management and get your, where he's a high risk to, and work on yourself. But if he's adamant that it wasn't him, then he could have been there for a long time until this eventually gets a retrial.
This idea that he's a model prisoner that has done no wrong, when even Sandra admits that he won't kind of go along, that he won't do anything, he won't progress, he would fail drugs tests. Now people say that it was sleeping tablets and everything else, but again, nonsense. Those things are prescribed. There was a lot of reasons that Luke was sent back to Shotts prison, and the idea that they were leading up to what would have been a release. And even Sandra says that they teased him with the release so he could do something wrong. The whole thing is excuse after excuse after excuse, and it's getting ridiculous. There's always a new update that's just down the road. There's always something else that they just can't tell you, but they'll tell you soon. And when the questions come, then the bans and the infighting and the civil war that we're speaking about now comes as well. So let's, as I say, when it comes to the parole, I believe there was probably a lot of Luke's army that were upset by that, and I don't mean to rub anyone's face in anything, but it can't be a surprise. It certainly hasn't seemed to be a surprise from Sandra Lean, who, as far back as James English, is talking about the fact that he won't progress. So all this is a theatre. It's done so that there's offence caused and outrage gained, but it's calculated. It is very, very calculated. These people may have no credentials, but they definitely have a plan, and their plan is to make money, get notoriety, and somehow keep themselves going and evolve these lies as long as possible. As long as people keep on buying the raffle tickets, getting t-shirts, hoodies, football cards, where people are actually paying money weekly to give to Sandra Lean, for what, guys? It's time that people actually really woke up about this. The parole, however, if we're kind of focusing on that, it's no surprise. I read in the news as well, some of the Jones family members were saying that, you know, they had an idea or they had faith in the, you know, the parole board themselves, and to a certain extent I think most of the people across Scotland would have as well, because these guys are there to look at the facts. They're not here to look at speculation on X. They're not here to look at the mad ramblings of some crazy booger sugar filled just insane shit storm of a man who throws out accusations without any proof and is outed by his own team as having no credentials. And let's really keep that word today, no credentials. I don't know if there's a song. If there's not, maybe we can write it. But this has been long, and I do apologise for what might have seemed a little bit drifty at times, but honestly, this is just insane. I don't know where to take all of this when it comes to Scott and Sandra. I don't know why people are still believing them when every week there's another lie that gets outed. It's absolutely insane. Maybe you can tell us in the comments below, what do you think of the Civil War, guys? Let's have a wee wrap up. What do you think of the Civil War? Who's right, who's wrong, who's in between, and where does it go from here? Personally, I can't see the sides and the factions coming back together, but I certainly see them keeping their respective grift going for as long as they can keep their head above water. What do you think of Luke being denied parole? Is it a surprise to you? I personally, as I say, don't believe it is a surprise. I personally don't think that 20 years for murder is a long enough sentence, even though he was younger when it happened. I believe that should be a lot longer, and I think it probably will, to be fair. But unfortunately for the Jones family, bringing up all the parole and the chance of release every now and again is probably going to be quite torturous. So yeah, empathy for that in that respect. But yeah, let me know how you feel in the comments below. Leave us a wee sarcastic thumbs up, and of course subscribe if you want to keep up. But to let you guys know as well, and to kind of throw this in here, had a couple of issues in terms of energy levels, life, and then some tech issues when it came to actually finalising this video. So I do apologise for any delays when these come up, but they will start to go up a bit more rapidly in the time coming up. As I say, I want to do a video more about the parole aspect, but at the end of the day I'm going to have to find out a lot more information before I can pad that out. I think it deserves a video on its own, and it deserves a wee bit more in depth, especially the timeline of what Sandra Lean has stated beforehand. So a couple of killing times coming up. There's, as I say, I've still got a lot more examples of Scott talking absolute bullshit, so might have to look at some of that as well. But I've got another 2 or 3 ideas on top of that, and of course transcribed, which has been away for a while. However, transcribed episode 3, looking at Corinne Mitchell, is in editing now. Again, tech issues, loads of corrupt audio, everything went wrong, and if I wasn't losing my hair, I would have pulled it all out. So thank you very much for listening to this one. As I say, please do leave a comment, get some chatter below, talk to each other amongst each other. It's fun when you're nice to each other as well. Of course, that means do not be a Derek. So thank you very much for your time, thank you very much for coming back, and thank you very much for listening to this video, being subscribed and giving it a little sarcastic thumbs up. Please put a comment down below. Consider a wee notification bell if you're really keen. And even for the first time, I'm going to say, consider sharing a video. Why not share some of the little minute-long ones we've done, or one of these, or transcribed? Get it shared. Bring people in and let them see how the cornies are working, because they need a loud voice so they can realise what they're doing is wrong, in my opinion. That's just me. But leave a comment down below, leave your sarcastic thumbs up. As I say, follow us on X. I still have a Facebook, but oh my god, I'm never on it. And as always, enjoy the rest of your day. Bye.